Hi there, welcome to the Gardens and Graveyards channel. Today we're in the garden and we're gonna play in some dirt. I'd love to hear if you have any favorite childhood memories of playing in dirt, and I will tell you my favorite story about playing in dirt in just a minute. But let's get into what we're doing today. We are moving our compost piles. So we're gonna move them in stages. The first thing that I wanna do is take all the finished compost that we have, get them in wheelbarrows, and we're going to fill all of our raised beds that are in the garden with our home compost. And then we'll see where we are, but the long-term goal is we're going to remove the bay that the current compost is in and move it to the other side of where our fresh debris is so that we can start rotating the compost. The reason we're moving this bay is because it's right behind a golden rain tree that we planted. And now the tree has grown and it's a little bit more difficult to get into that bay. And I would just like to move it so it's super easy access. And it's pretty exciting, but we are almost to that point in our garden where we have enough ground cover that we're not having to mulch a whole lot of areas anymore. And so we are using a bark mulch for the majority of our mulching, but I still like to use compost in containers and raised beds. And I think we're finally at the point where maybe we won't have to bring compost from off site and just use our own compost. Which is really great because our last load of off-site compost brought in a ton of viola that is a little invasive and getting in places I don't want viola. You might think, how could I not want a viola? They're so sweet. Well, when they choke out my other plants, it's a problem. So, if there's weed seeds in my compost, they're weeds that I've already dealt with and I know what to do and I know what to expect. But to continue to bring more weed seeds into the garden just doesn't make any sense. So I want to just play in the dirt and get our raised beds filled with compost. Spencer moved some logs out of the way so we could access both these bins really easy. And yeah, I don't know that we'll get to rotating the other compost today, but we do a slow compost. We do not do anything to accelerate the composting action. So we just really just pile our debris in one area and just let it slowly sink down. But we have started implementing dead hedges into the garden. And if you haven't watched our dead hedge video, I highly recommend it. So when we start rotating this pile over here, we will be pulling all of any kind of like branchy items or twigs, not really twigs, but like branches, or I don't think there's any really big woody debris in there, but any woody debris, we'll pull that out, put it in the dead hedge, and then our compost piles will essentially just be weeds and garden debris. And those will be easier to manage, maintain, turn, and maybe I'll be more inclined to maintain the compost piles a little bit more, because right now with branches and stuff in it, it's really difficult to turn. So anyhow, let's just get into the project. We're just gonna remove all of this finished compost. Most of that compost came from our debris pile in the poison garden, and recently we rededicated an area to the garden, and we're creating a room all for poisonous plants, and we needed to remove the debris pile down there. So we disassembled the debris pile and we pulled all the compost, the finished compost that was underneath the debris pile, and put it in our compost bin, our finished compost bin. So a lot of that compost is from there, and a little bit is from just our regular slow compost that was up here to begin with. All right, I'm going to turn the camera around. I'm going to show you I'm going to give you a little bit closer look at what the bins look like right now, and then we're just going to start filling wheelbarrows and a gorilla cart full of our compost and get them out into the raised beds, and we'll see how far it stretches today. So you can see this is our working compost where we've been putting all of our annual debris and cuttings and weeds are all in this compost pile, and then this is more of the finished compost over on this side. And you can see this is our golden rain tree here, and we can access it at an angle, but it would be nice to not have to mess with the tree so much, especially as she grows and her branches are kind of like at the eye level. So we're gonna take those pallets out. We'll get some new pallets eventually and create a bin over on this side so that we can move the debris from here to there, and then this will be our next finished compost pile, and then we just keep switching back and forth as things break down and as needed. As I work with this compost, I'm reminded of my favorite dirt story. Back in high school, our track field sat on a hill that sloped towards the student parking lot. And because it's Oregon, it was always raining, which meant that the hill was almost always mud. After practice, the athletes would slide down it instead of taking the stairs, just for the joy of it. A few of us did it too, once or twice when no one was looking. But my favorite moment came one day after PE. It was raining, everyone was already a little wet and a little muddy, and someone decided to sit down and slide. And then another, and then suddenly the entire class followed. For about 2 minutes, we were all just bodies on a muddy hillside, laughing, slipping, getting scraped by twigs covered in dirt. And for that brief moment, every label disappeared. The nerd, the jock, the shy one, the wild one, none of it mattered. We were all equal, all messy, all human. It didn't make us friends forever, but it left me with something I've carried ever since. The reminder that all of us are just rolling down our own muddy hills, trying, failing,
laughing, doing our best with whatever life hands us. And even if we don't know each other's stories completely, we're still here, sharing this moment and living this life together.
Awesome. We have our raised beds and our containers topped off with home compost, all ready for spring planting, with the exception of this chard that just won't stop. Planted this chard back in March, And here we are. I'm really like, and I mean, we've been eating off of it, but like, seriously, I'm curious to see if it'll go a whole year. That's what I'm waiting to see. I don't know. Here's a quick look at how the bins look now. You can see that we've sort of made a dent this way in this compost pile, but there's still plenty here for us to continue on in other parts of the garden. And then once it's all at ground level, we'll kind of spread it out around this tree, suppress some of the weeds that are around there, mostly buttercup and grass. There is a little cyclamen. I think I just like tossed it in here because it died where it was, but it's growing in the compost pile, so that's kind of fun. But we do usually come and clean that out, and sometimes we have bark chips back here. We just didn't do that this last year, so it'll be nice to kind of clean that all out and have some nice compost around this tree for the spring, but we'll get to it. It just feels so amazing to use our own compost in so many spaces this season, knowing exactly what is in the soil, knowing that all those beds are top dressed and everybody's tucked in and we're ready for spring. It's so exciting. I like to put compost or mulch on all of our beds in the winter and fall time to mitigate all of the deluge of rains that we get all winter long. It really helps prevent compaction. And of course, it gives everybody a little snug blanket. Here on the Oregon coast in a zone 9A, we don't typically get very much snow, like maybe a dusting. Sometimes we get an ice storm. Our freezes come super late in the year or super early, depending on how you want to look at it. Sometimes they don't come until like the first or second week in January. So, you know, we're still just rolling with it and gardening in between rain showers. But we got a good dent on our compost pile today. We're going to stop here for the day and relax because it's a lot of shoveling into the compost or shoveling into wheelbarrows is, you know, straining on your lower back. So we do what we can to make sure that we're protecting our bodies and also listening to what our bodies need. And when we need to rest, we stop. So we have plenty of compost left that we can still do some other projects, like the tire garden needs to be composted. The medicine garden needs to be composted. We have some other small raised beds in the moon garden that could use a top dressing and a few other little spaces here and there. But I feel really good about what we got done today. And I really hope that you enjoyed seeing us work in our garden today, and I hope that you were inspired to nourish your roots and you're celebrating your life, and we'll see you in the next video.